Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
With us today, Jonathan Spangler. Now, you and I met. Actually, we met through the publicist from the NAMM show, which was this week. And she said, you got to meet this guy. He's got a great story and he's got a great product. And sure, send him on over to the booth. And the next thing I know, I am just, and it takes a lot to really impress me. And he brought out this guitar, the Ascender model, I guess is what it's called. And I went, okay, this is way cool. Jonathan Spangler, you are the CEO founder of Ciari Guitars.
This is true. This is true.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's my honor.
We ask this question with just about all of our guests. How did you get started in the business? Were you a musician originally? Because I know a little bit of your background. You're kind of a legal otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say it's a road less traveled to get into music for me in terms of the music business. I grew up playing music, but more, howling at the moon with my family. My dad had a sailboat, and so we were truly the family that we would just take our dinghy, a ukulele, some beer, and go over to another boat and say, permission to board. And it was, we made a lot of fun memories that way.
Yeah.
But as you alluded to, I've spent the last 25 years before Ciari as a patent attorney, and both in the law firm, worked at the patent office, and then led the patent department for a medical company in San Diego for about 15 years before getting into the music business. But truly, the reason that I took action was because of my role as chief patent counsel for this medical company.
Which there's a connection in there with the guitar too that we're going to talk about.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some there's a symbiotic relationship here. But truly, the CEO at this medical company, he would have every quarterly meeting in the format of a Tonight Show. And so
nice.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. We worked very hard. But in order to drive transparency and accountability and all those things that really matter, we had these very true, consistent, disciplined meetings. But he tapped me to be the Paul Schaefer of the company band. And so it was my job to recruit talent as it walked within the four walls. And it was, of the 8 years that I led the company band, I mean, we grew from tens to hundreds to thousands of people. At one point, we were simulcasting to our international, multiple countries around the globe. And frankly, I had to practice to be good enough to not look like a dope. And so as I was basically traveling a lot for my work, I think at the high point, it was like 40 times a year. I was at the patent office and courtrooms throughout the country, depositions, international travel, all this stuff. I would have to tote a guitar in order to practice to, again, not look like a dope when we're performing. And that's where I experienced the pain points of guitar air travel. It finally dawned on me, maybe I should take my own advice.
It's interesting you bring that up. I spent many years on the road touring myself, road managing acts. Anybody that listens to the show knows that. And I remember one act in particular that I toured with, Billy Preston and his band back in the late 80s, early 90s. Mm-hmm. The guitar player and the bass player would always carry their guitars onto the plane. And I remember the guitar player and the bass player both, begging, can they please hang the guitars, in the little luggage closets? Sure. 9 times out of 10, it was, unless you're in first class, it was a no. Mm-hmm. So then the instrument goes in the overhead bin, and that's even if the bass guitar fit in the overhead bin, depending on the type of the plane. Sometimes it was not a good outcome. And then there were a couple times we had to check the instruments. Yeah. And that was almost never a good outcome.
That's no way to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Check it and wreck it.
Yeah. That should probably be the title of the show. Check it and wreck it. And really, so that's part of the outcome of this guitar that you have created, this Ascender model, that if anybody's watching the show, not just listening, I've got it sitting right next to me. And it's a beautiful instrument, but it is a lot more than just a beautiful instrument.
Thank you. Yes. Well, and again, it was painful. The struggle is real, right? And yes, it's a high-class problem to be traveling and so forth, to be fortunate enough for that. But it became really an anxiety driver, right? And it's, okay, it's a gauntlet. So I get past the check-in. Yeah, what about the gate agent? And even if you work your way down the jetway, you can still have a purser who will say, and who knows why, right? But it's just like this consistent gating items or checkpoints or whatever you want to call it. And so, yeah, as a patent attorney, I've been telling people for years, like my working definition and advice is study the friction in your life. And if there are no options, to solve for it, solve it yourself, right? Make what you want.
Yeah, create the solution.
Create the solution, right. And so I had the, kind of epiphany. Maybe I should listen to myself. And so then I filed the patent in 2012. And the patent issued before we even had a prototype, and frankly, left my day job to pursue this, and it's which basically means I've got a great wife who's very supportive.
Anybody in this business that is halfway successful has that totally supportive spouse. Yeah,
that's definitely the case, and so. Yeah, then we started the development process, and because of my, I do have a biomedical engineering background before law school. You have to have a technical background to do patent law.
Oh, how did you get that? I mean, was that just a passion of yours along with playing guitars to have a biomedical background, or was it just something that intrigued you, or was it easy, which I doubt?
It definitely wasn't easy, but I find the life sciences very purposeful. Okay. Right? Being able to give someone their life back and to be part of the continuum of care where, you can make a difference in someone's life, right? Music also has that highly purposeful, component as well. So I think there's some parallels. But I was going to go to med school, and back in the day, just got the advice, hey, the old gray Mary, which used to be, in terms of healthcare was changing, you could participate in other ways, go become an engineer, and then found out about patent law by accident, frankly, and it was the best thing that ever happened, because essentially you get paid to learn to then advocate, right? You have to understand it in order to draft it and then advocate on behalf of the inventor in front of the patent office. And it's, at any rate, I enjoy that immensely. I have a deep respect for innovation. And so, and it's, of all the types of law, right? I would wager that, people are by and large happier to see patent attorneys than they are bankruptcy or personal injury.
Litigation
Yeah. And so I like that too.
Because that in itself, the service there, you're providing forward momentum in someone's life and in their career.
Amen. And having good patent protection and good advice and knowing what to do and what not to do can make the difference between, having a true inflection point in someone's, state, and even their family and their multi-generational opportunities to live the American dream.
Right.
Right.
And a patent, obviously, we have these conversations when it regards the band or the songwriter. You get your music copyrighted, you get the title of the band trademarked, but as you create these things, we sometimes overlook that patent process too when it's a physical creation.
Right, physical or even software. And just to note, one of the reasons that I ended up kind of, even though we're based in San Diego, we make our guitars here in Nashville. Part of the reason there is we got into Project Music, which is that music tech accelerator from the Nashville Entrepreneur Center.
Right.
And we were in the 2019 cohort. And that was also when we brought Joe Glazer of Glazer Instruments onto our board.
He's part of your advisory board, right?
Yes, he is, and I'm so profoundly grateful to call him a friend and a colleague. I can't say enough great things about how impactful he has been and continues to be in what we're doing here.
And he's hands-on when it comes to the guitar.
Yes, we had 2 hour-long design review meetings in amongst a very, very jam-packed NAMM schedule. So, yeah, he is absolutely putting his fingerprints on this guitar.
Jonathan Spangler's in the studio with us today. He's the CEO and founder of Ciari Guitars.
You're listening to the business side of music.
When you have a Korg synth at your fingertips, the possibilities are endless. Be it digital, analog modeling, altered FM, wave sequencing, or the multi-engine synth, Korg gives you easy access to a variety of features to help you get the perfect sounds quickly. Whether you're a professional musician or just starting out, Korg truly has a synthesizer to help you express yourself. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products to create new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Let's talk about this guitar, because looking at it, here on the guitar stand to my right, and it's a very classy looking instrument. It's got all the features you would expect in an electric guitar, but it's got also a very unique function, which we just touched on briefly in the beginning of the show. This thing folds up and fits in a backpack, which there are guitars out there that'll do that, but they're kind of that broomstick, cigar box type, instrument that it's enough to kind of get you around to dink, to rehearse, to woodshed or whatever. This is a full-blown professional, get on stage, kick some ass electric guitar.
Yes, and we're very, first of all, thank you for the kind words, but we're very proud of where we ended up. I can tell you with, great certainty that it was a nonlinear path. We've broken more strings, necks, but never will. Right, and so we always tried to iterate our way out of the development process.
And let me guess, it didn't happen overnight. I'm imagining the engineering aspects of this thing. And in some of the notes I read, jumping back to your medical field, you actually had some pretty high-tech medical engineering involved in this.
Yes, and I'm quick to point out this was not a solo endeavor, and it has taken a village, not only by the likes of Joe and others, the warm hands, and embrace from the Nashville community, including the Project Music, but my Rolodex, because I was in the medical device field, it was filled with people who. And matter of fact, the guy who did the primary design was a valedictorian, of his engineering class, mechanical engineering. But it's people who developed hips, knees, implants for the spine. We were in the spine surgery space in particular, and so this stuff has to work, and it work for a lifetime. And so...
And do it accurately every single time.
Yes, for sure. And that's really the key. And I'm just going to, we're kind of teasing where we're headed.
Yeah.
But there's a mid-neck hinge. That is really the heart and soul of this guitar. The hinge itself, we have international patent protection on the hinge just by itself. And there may be, other applications beyond guitars where it may have applicability. But it was 100%. Its sole purpose was to go from, essentially 180 degrees and always come back to baseline.
When you look at the video of our show, you see this neck literally folding in half. The tension of the strings releases somewhat, but the strings for the most part, and when you came here to the studio and pulled this out of the backpack, and literally a backpack that it fits into, about the size of something you would take to school.
Yeah.
It's not anything big. Unfolded this and strummed it. I'm like, that guitar's in tune.
It came out of the oven way better than I expected. I got to be perfectly frank. The engineering that went into, the hinge and so forth, we also spent a lot of time on what we call the actuator. And the actuator is something that has two functions. One is to detension and tension the strings like that, both to drop them from 118 fully tuned to 3 pounds. So it drops it instantaneously to 3 pounds. And then there's a floating tailpiece that when you fold the neck, the tailpiece actually is spring-loaded, and so the strings follow the fold, and then they fall into these very minuscule grooves on either ends of each of the abutment joints. And
that's on the neck.
That's on the neck,
yeah.
Yes, exactly. The second function of that actuator is to lock and unlock the hinge. And so there are pins that either get driven up into the hinge to lock it straight or get retracted to then allow it to fold and articulate.
Is there any issues, problems, concerns with flex on the neck? It's like the old Gibson SGs. We used to call those rubber neck guitars because that's kind of what they were.
Yeah.
Or is this thing pretty stout and just stays locked in?
It's very stout. It's very stout. Yeah.
The technology is there to be able to do that now.
It is. And we've made improvements over time. I mean, I would be hard-pressed to look at anything that hasn't changed from day one to now.
And how long was that process from the day that you conceived this on paper to where you literally had the first successful guitar and you could go, this is it? You had that aha moment. This is it.
Yes. Well, it really two phases. There was the patent phase, and then there was the product development phase. And so was the patent phase, was that the precursor to the development? Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And matter of fact, I'm going to give props to my daughter Remy, because no joke, when she was born, I would get up at night to put her back down to bed and give my wife a break or what have you, and ended up where I couldn't go back to sleep. And I thought, you know what, I've got some time. I'm gonna write the patent that I've been thinking about because, man, I hate this guitar air travel.
Which is funny because that's kind of the Keith Richards method of creating, because he would do the same thing. He'd get up in the middle of the night, have this vision for a Rolling Stones song, and he'd write it down on a piece of paper, and then he'd go back to sleep. The problem with that was Keith would wake up the next morning, he couldn't read his writing.
Yeah, well, thankfully I typed it in.
Yeah.
That really got the ball rolling. And for any entrepreneur out there, a little life hack, thing to keep in mind. You don't have to have a prototype to start the patent process. You can get a patent without any prototype. And it doesn't even, you don't have to prove it works to get a patent. And so I think a lot of times perfection is the enemy of good, right? And you just, I have to keep working on it. You know what? Put a stake in the ground. It's going to change. Everything changes, particularly as you learn by doing.
Yeah.
But I put that stake in the ground in 2012. That was the first patent filing. Converted it in 2013, and then it issued in 2016. In August of 2016.
It takes that long to go through the process?
Yeah, and oftentimes it can take more than that. Sometimes it can take less, but it's multi-year typically, which again is why you want to put that, get that clock moving.
Right.
And it can also spur you into action. And it also gives you some leverage and credibility when you talk to for example, investors or potential strategic partners. If you walk up with hey, I've got this idea, you're not going to have the leverage and the position of negotiation that you would otherwise to say,
right.
Hey, I've got a patent pending. Let's talk.
Yeah. It's self-protection.
Yeah.
Definitely is when you get out there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the guitar for a minute, because it's a standard full-size body. It's nothing on this is miniature scale. 22 frets.
22 frets, 24 3/4 inch scale.
And the pickups are Seymour Duncan, the 59s. I'm taking it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So nothing on this guitar is, what should I say? Nothing's been cheapened. It's got all of the bells and the whistles that you would need, in addition to the volume and tone controls for each of the pickups.
Mm-hmm.
The body is constructed out of
basswood.
It is.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it, along with the finish, you go, okay, you would almost think it was like a graphite composite or something like that.
It's a very common question.
Yeah.
And it's just a beautiful satin finish, but it's a basswood.
Mahogany neck.
Yeah, mahogany neck and Palfero or ebony fingerboards.
But then you flip this guitar over, and once again, if you're watching the video, you'll see, let's call them the guts of this thing.
Yeah.
This looks like this is a simple feat of engineering not. This is very complex when you look at the back of this guitar. And this is where that medical engineering comes into place, right?
For sure. And again, I'm grateful to the team that helped me execute on it. Having the idea, you can get a patent with an idea, but you can't get a product without real engineering horsepower. So
when you went to these medical engineers and you said, I've got this idea and this is what I'm looking at, and these are folks that work, like you said, in the spinal or the hip joint or, whatever it is that needs to be replaced, and you said, here's my idea. Did they look at you kind of cockeyed, or did they go, yeah, this might be kind of cool? I mean, because there's a whole new world for them, right?
Some yes, some no.
Okay.
And matter of fact, this individual I'm referring to, he was our lead guitarist in the company band.
Ah, there you go.
And so, and he had been a submarine, officer in the Navy, right? And so he thought, heck yeah, I wish I'd have had this when I was deployed, right? Because he had a Jackson that he had to, navigate and slide under his bunk and. And
if there's no room anywhere, it's on a submarine.
Exactly. So, he was all in. And so this was nights and weekends and mornings and all sorts of stuff. But that's kind of how we had those first discussions and the early efforts. Yeah, he was all in.
How long did it take, if you don't mind me asking, just to engineer, and maybe it's not that component, but those components to put that together? Because that really is kind of the engine that drives this thing, along with the neck.
Yes, for sure. We did a feasibility, actually it was a gap analysis at the end of 2016, and that essentially, we engaged a product development engineering company, and they do all sorts of awesome, incredible resources there. But we did the gap analysis at the end of 2016, and then the real checks started getting cut, in 2017.
Right.
And then, when I went to my first NAM, it was 2017, and I joked that I had a pick, a PowerPoint, a prayer, right? And that was it. We had no prototype.
So you didn't even have a physical piece to take to show anybody.
I truly had a pick, and that was it.
Wow.
And anybody who listened to me, and I had my Ciari shirt and the logo, and people are like, hey, where's your product? It's coming,
It's right up here
it's
in my
right
head.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then brought a prototype. So, end of 16 is when it started. And then at NAM of 2018 is when I met Joe, and he called me crazy. He looked at the guitar, looked at me, he said, you're freaking nuts, but I like it. And then he took it, and this is really, God is my witness. I went to Joe at the Plek booth in Hall E at the NAM show in Anaheim, and he was Caesar. And if it was a thumbs down, I was going to put a bullet in it and just walk away and think to myself, well, you know what, I tried. It was
a
fun.
nice dream.
Yes. And if it was a thumbs up, then all right, here we go.
Yeah.
And the question was, could we or could we not pluck the neck? Because what we wanted, and from the very beginning, this has been, I want a real guitar that folds. I don't want a gimmick, and that's, this is a guitar, not a gimmick.
Because so many of those out there, and I'm not saying this to slight anybody else, but it's kind of what it has been, just to get through the moment.
Right, and the travel segment, again, this is just my interpretation after my research was it's either quality or convenience, but it's never and.
Right.
So
right.
So what we sought out to do is be the and between quality and convenience. And, and so I knew enough that we had to be able to pluck the neck because it had to have great playability to be worth anything. And I didn't want to waste my time, my money, investors' money, or customers' money, giving them something that wasn't a guitar first and something that was convenient as a feature, not as the main selling point.
In the studio with us, Jonathan Spangler, who's the founder and CEO of Ciari Guitars.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives, whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
Since 1963, Korg has been creating new experiences in music and performance. That is what drove the creation of some of Korg's most legendary products, such as the Poly 6, the M1, the Electribe, the Triton, the Minilogue, the Kronos, Wave State, Op 6, and most recently the Nautilus, which is what we have here in our studio. Korg is dedicated to creating new, innovative, and uncompromising instruments which maintain the highest quality to inspire music makers, past, present, and future. Visit Korg.com or your favorite Korg dealer to get your hands on one of their products and start creating new music always. Korg, the official sponsor of the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Let's talk about the neck, because when you look at the neck, it's I call them dimples. You got a little, when this thing folds and does this total 180, the strings obviously follow the neck. Where that is at, and I think it's in 2 frets.
Yeah, at the 12th and at the 14th.
So does that seem to affect guitar players? I mean, does that throw them off a little bit? Either from, I wouldn't imagine so much from a solo perspective. If they're chording that high, does it throw them off? Is this something you learn to adapt to, or is it even really noticeable?
So it's not noticeable. And so it's so consistent where people, as a first, when they first pick up the guitar, they'll, it folds great. And they immediately go up and start dancing all over, to see, and they start doing their bends. Man, I can't feel it. Well, of course, you're riding the frets, right?
Yeah.
And unless you have, I will note, because, we talk about it being a pro, it's a legitimate guitar that folds. We were very, very fortunate. At the end of 2019, we received editor's pick from Guitar Player, and their conclusion was the Ascender is the first travel guitar for professional use, either as a backup or a main instrument.
That's a nice brand,
It gives me goosebumps every time I say it almost. I mean, it's we're so proud of that. But the only thing that they noted is that if you have a very sweepy blues style of playing, you might feel, the notches. It's not, you can't do what you want to do. But that was the only thing that they pointed out. And frankly, we've, others have, we never get complaints on that, put it that way.
When you kind of talk about that blues sweepy feel, you've got Justin Johnson playing this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And the guy really does a nice number playing this guitar.
He is so gifted, and tremendous human being. His wife Nikki, they're salt of the earth, and that was an incredible NAMM. That was summer NAMM of 2018,
right?
Where it was the last day of the show, and he happened upon our booth because we had airline seats. We had a row of airline seats in our booth, just to underscore, hey, this guitar. It's the only guitar that qualifies as a personal item because it truly can go under the seat, not just in the overhead bin. It can go under seat. And think about that. The airlines, it's a continual onslaught of nickel and diming and charging for this and charging for that. And, oh, wait, now a lot of them are charging for you to bring your roller bag on.
Yeah.
Just for the privilege of putting it in the overhead bin.
Right.
Right? And so the last sanctuary, right, where they can't mess with you is the personal item. This goes under the seat in front of you. So anyway, Justin Johnson was walking by and he just saw the airline seats and thought, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And he told me later, he would have walked right past had he not noticed those airline seats. And then that night he invited me to go, to his studio and did this incredible review. That was out of body. It was so incredibly fun. Yeah, tremendously enjoyable.
The guitar in itself, and you have a lever that hides neatly into the body. And once again, if you're watching the video, you'll see how that functions. The guitar, how long does it take to make a guitar? And the body is constructed actually by a machine.
There's a CNC machine that is used to route all the wood to make our bodies. And then...
But the structural integrity of the body is still there.
For sure.
Even with everything that's been cored out, hollowed out.
Indeed. And there is something we call the tone plate, which is what we recess into the back of the guitar. Basically fuse it to the wood. And then we mount the actuator to that. And so... serendipitous find, like finding $20 in your pocket by accident. The sustain is awesome.
Yeah.
The actuator actually, it has its own signature. And so that...
It does what it's supposed to do and then some.
And then some, yes. And that's completely found, that was a found feature.
Yeah. And you're able to replicate that with each one that you build.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that the measurements don't vary much from guitar to guitar when you're doing, especially a CNC machine.
Indeed. And so the tolerances are tight. It is not an easy guitar to make, right? And,
I bet.
And, there's a lot of know-how in terms of the things that have to be, orchestrated to effectuate it.
But it's still... You still hands-on. I mean, you talk about Joe Glazer, who's one of the more amazing tech guys here in town.
Yes,
guitar guys. There's still hands-on, kind of that luthier environment or involvement in putting this guitar together.
For sure. And our luthier, a guy named Skylar Dean, he's our luthier. We have a location in the WeHo district of Nashville, just south of downtown. Yeah, long and short is our shop is a cool place.
Yeah.
And I love getting out here, and it's, that's where the magic really happens.
How many guitars can you produce? I'm assuming one at a time, but how long is that process to produce one guitar? Are they each pretty much custom made? Because you order them online, right?
At this stage, it's direct to consumer because we're so new.
Yeah.
Right. But
they can choose their colors, their neck.
Yes, and so we have options by a fingerboard. Whether it's Powfer or ebony. You have a host of different colors. You've got flame maple or even a Bolivian rosewood. We call the Big Lebowski because it looks kind of like a bowling ball.
Yeah.
From the movie. But so you can order, from a pallet. And then, as far as where we're headed is being able to have more inventory. And one of the things I think I may have mentioned, but we did an equity-based crowdfund, raised $1.5 million of capital in April to fuel the next phase of scaling the current business, the Ascender, developing and launching our mid-tier electric that will be yet to be named. We're going to have a naming contest, and whoever throws their hat in the ring and wins gets a free guitar.
And let's talk about that for a minute, because the Ascender, and we discussed this a little bit at the booth at the NAMM show, it's not cheap. It is not for the casual recreational guitarist unless you happen to be financially set. It's not cheap. The other guitar is going to be more of a mid-level, more economical.
Yes, and the Ascender, starts about $3,000,
right,
and can go as high as mid fours if you whistle and bell all the way up the chain. But really for the working musician, this yet to be named mid-tier, it's a little bit pared back in terms of the electronics. It's just tone and volume, and still Seymour Duncan 59s, and we still pluck the neck. And it's, and matter of fact, I'd mentioned before we started airing that our mid-tier electric, we had its first public performance at Legends, on Thursday night of NAMM, and where a guy played, and he's toured nationally and internationally with a host of different acts, but he also is a regular on Broadway. Yesterday I caught up with him. He had 3 4-hour gigs.
Yeah.
And he played this thing, and he said, "Don't change a thing. This is exactly what I need." And so I was absolutely thrilled. But that is the mid-tier is the, will be the, by far and away, not only is it more affordable, it'll have a 1 in front of it, right? We haven't dialed in exactly the pricing, but it'll be probably be $1,500 in high ones.
Yeah.
But we want to and need to have something that it's just easier to get into, and we're super excited with the early reception of it. And I'll point out some of the changes too. It's not just that it has a different electronics. Has a different actuator that it does exactly what the original one does. It just does it in a different way and in a much more cost-effective way.
But when you look at, once again, the internal movements, the internal workings of the Ascender, you get why the price point is what it is. Because this is a feat of engineering that, from everything that I have seen and researched and heard on multiple occasions now in the last few days, this thing will not let you down. It won't disappoint you.
Right. Oh, for, and I also want to underscore, we're not trying to drive a wedge between you and your favorite, tele that your uncle gave you, right, or what have you. This is an and. It's an and.
If you have to get on a plane and go play, a radio gig or do a one-off that's 2,000 miles away, and you don't want to take everything else that, is in your guitar rack, this is the guitar that really fills that gap and doesn't leave any question of whether it can hold up or not.
Yes, and we're very, very proud of that. And that's where the Ascender, some people want simple electronics, just tone volume when they're in the heat of battle and they're flying on stage. They want to know exactly what they've done for 20 years with that same kind of rig.
Right.
Others want to be able to coil tap and bring the bridge from a humbucker to a single coil at the drop of a hat, and maybe we have that independent coil tap and tone volume control for both the bridge and the neck on the Ascender, and so that will allow a lot of tonal varieties, so it can be a workhorse. So as you mentioned, flight aids, radio tour, tuck away in the tour bus. You know what? Maybe as an insurance policy, maybe you are traveling with your Les Paul to that flight aid in Vegas, but man, again, you got a gauntlet.
Oh my gosh! Imagine if you got off the plane with your prized '59 Les Paul, and there's headstock damage or neck damage or whatever.
Yes.
And now you're in a strange, faraway place. What do you do?
Yes. So again, there's the insurance policy component. There's an artist who was the first to tour in Europe with our guitar, and he had a couple of interesting observations. And again, as someone who has never and will never, be a touring musician, it was really exciting to hear his perspective. One was he came back from Europe and he said that thing did everything I needed on stage. It was awesome. But he said the best part was I felt like I was on vacation. I didn't know how much stress I had until you took it away. And so I ask you, life's hard enough. I mean, there's a reduction of stress and anxiety. I think there's a value to that. I surely raise my hand as someone who I would, I have enough stress. I want to remove it if I can. The other point he made is you can't always rely. Let's say you're going to do a fly date and rely on the backline, or for them to have a house guitar or something like that. He said, that is roulette in and of itself. Maybe there's a tech there, maybe there's not a tech there, maybe
right.
it's the right color, it looks cool, but the action's terrible.
And you don't have time to fix it.
No, and again, so it's about.
And then you have that question in your head of like, is this going to get me through the gig? Because you're in uncharted waters at that point.
Yes, and as it may be a nagging anxiety, but it's probably in the back of your mind as you're flying, like, oh boy, I hope this works.
Yeah, hope it survives the trip. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so how can people find these guitars?
So our website is ciariguitars.com, and that is spelled CIARI guitars.com.
And everything's on there. You can order your colors, whatever you're looking for.
Yes.
It's a great guitar. Normally, we don't like to promote instruments this way.
Yeah.
But like I said, you and your company just blew Tom and I away at the NAMM show. We said, we got to get this guy on the show because this really is an amazing feat of engineering.
Well, I'm grateful. I'm humbled, and to have been invited in. Yeah, NAMM really was. It far exceeded my expectations this year, and I think a lot of us went in wondering what's it going to be for show post pandemic, or God willing, post pandemic. But here we are.
Yeah.
I think it was far more meaningful, and I think people really relished the opportunity to engage, and have dialogue. And I think there was a benefit to the fact that it wasn't 20,000 plus. You could have conversations. People would come back. So I'm really glad that our paths crossed. So thanks to the good folks at NAMM for putting us in contact. And I'm a huge proponent of NAMM, and love what you're doing here, and super excited to be here.
Well, let's both keep doing it.
Yeah, amen.
All right.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound designed by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Fuson.
Never had one lesson.
You're out. Finished. Expelled.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.